Welcome to Career Conversations Powering a Sustainable Future, one-off episodes within Spencer Ogden's SOapbox podcast. In each episode, we shine a spotlight on the people driving change in the energy sector. Through their stories, we explore the career journeys, challenges, and moments that have shaped their path and continue to shape the future of energy. These conversations offer real insight into the talent powering the energy transition across renewables, natural resources, and infrastructure, and aim to inspire the next generation of industry leaders.
Hello and welcome to SOapbox, Spencer Ogden's newly formatted podcast. I'm joined today by Marie-Hélène Westholm-Knebel from ABB as part of our Career Conversations piece. It's a new piece where we're really shining the spotlight on senior figures within the energy sector, looking to understand more about their careers, how they've developed through to the senior positions that they are currently in. So welcome, Marie.
Thanks, Regan, for having me.
Would you like to give a quick introduction to yourself?
My name is Marie. I am 41 years old, mom of 2 kids. I am the head of sustainability of ABB Energy Industries Division. I am located in Switzerland. And I have been living here for the past 8 years and working for the past 7 years with ABB, 15 years experience in sustainability and ESG.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I have done my research and I know that there is a wealth of experience there, and I'm sure we'll get into that in a little bit more detail later. As a brief introduction to our audience, my name is Regan Callender. I am Spencer Ogden's Global ESG Manager, and it is my job to look after our day-to-day running of our ESG function, the environmental, social and governance elements of our business, putting together our strategy and trying to create the impact both with our clients, our impact partners, to generate progress towards sustainable development. So jumping straight into the discussion, would you like to share a little bit about your journey into sustainability and particularly the energy sector that you now sit within?
As I said, 15 years of experience in sustainability. I moved from one sector to the other. I'm currently the head of sustainability, as I said, from ABB Energy Industries. In case you do not know ABB, we are an engineering company globally placed in the world with around 110,000 people. And our role actually is to support our customers outrun. What does that mean? We try to make them leaner and cleaner through our automation, digital solution, expertise, and so on and so forth. And my role here is to actually implement our sustainability agenda. So we launched this sustainability agenda in 2019, and the idea is to make sure that we cascade group targets into the organization through the different functions, whether we're looking at our products, our operations, our sites. This is driven through 3 main pillars, one which is about enabling a low carbon society. So this is our climate agenda. One which is about preserving resources. So you have a lot of environmental KPIs, both for the sites themselves, but also for the products. And one which is about supporting social progress. And this is where you look into diversity and inclusion, human rights, HSE, integrity, and other processes. This has been my role for the past 7 years now within ABB. But before that, I moved from one country to the other, one sector from the other, until I reached actually my position here in Switzerland. The journey within ABB has been really fantastic because with this role, I actually get to explore our internal processes, working with the different functions and our subject matter experts, but I get also to front what our customers are looking for. So how do we make sure that our internal sustainability agenda reflects to the external world as well?
And thank you very much for that overview. And it's really important that we really hone in on the development that ABB has seen, and you personally within your career. I think moving into the business 7 years ago, then cultivating the sustainability strategy and bringing that in 2019, and we will come on to it a little bit later on, but I'm sure there were some challenges to implementing a strategy like that. Just in a short response, in 2019, was that seen within the industry from your perspective as ABB leading the transition? Would you consider yourselves and that program as an industry leading program, or how was the landscape in 2019 when that was introduced?
I think it's a very good question because the exercise we've done was very much based on benchmarking and materiality assessment. So what we did was really looking into our customer base, all the stakeholders we were engaged with, understanding the mega trends as well that were driving the world back then, and then planning ahead for 10 years more or less. We were looking into an horizon span of until 2030. Now we're looking 2050, like most companies with regard to their targets. Front running, yes, on a few things, indeed, trying to understand how we can actually position ourselves better, but also how we can actually promote improvements. So it's not just about being the best, it's really seeking genuine impact. With regard to climate actions, with regard to how we already take into account ESG, for example, in terms of reporting processes, what we can do to make sure that our workforce is safe. So it's a lot of processes, so to say, introspective process to see where we have been going. I mean, sustainability is not new to ABB. We've been working for that and having sustainability reports for decades. But the idea is to see, hey, what is the next step and how can we be even better than this?
So a real holistic approach from yourselves at ABB and you obviously leading that progression. I think also in conducting materiality surveys and assessment more broadly, that's something that we've done at Spencer Ogden, and is something that we took a lot of time over, because it's all well and good understanding that there is the need for change and wanting to drive that change, but also, as you mentioned, as part of your materiality assessment, what are we able to measure? What processes do we need to put in place? And then how does that enable us to springboard from that? So I absolutely understand your challenges, let's say, in bringing that together. So we now know a little bit about yourself in your current role and the impact that you've made over the last few years. But in line with the career conversations piece, I'm really interested for us to go back in time a little bit and to look to your desires and how you got into the industry. So from your perspective, where did a passion for sustainability come from? Did it feature when you were growing up? I know it must have spurned from somewhere. And I speak to a lot of sustainability professionals, as I'm sure you do. And there is normally some sort of ember which has created a flame, and that flame has erupted from there. So where did your passion for sustainability originally come from, Marie?
So I think you might have a lot of discussions about childhood moments and what triggered actually love for sustainability. It's a good point, because back then, so I was born in the 80s, you would not call that sustainability. I would possibly look into a more, caring for the environment, caring for people, empathy, values that I developed through my families, for example. I have family in Sweden, so I spent a lot of time outdoors in Lapland, in the northern part of Sweden, where actually, you put your hands on moss, on plants, on things that you can pick for living, so to say. We had some friends in the family actually also supporting a reindeer migration. So we spent some summers fishing and sleeping in huts and a bit very traditional, I would say. And I think, of course, you develop compassion, you develop a sense of care for your planet. That possibly led to me having the idea that when I would grow up, I would save polar bears, because that were the first signals you would have in the news as well. And then I think, how can I do it? But overall, it was never really something that I thought, hey, this is going to be my job. When I studied, I did not know what I wanted to do. Generally, when you would think sustainability or environmental management, it would direct you towards an engineering career. It's not something that I was interested in. So I actually have a bachelor in political science, which provided me with a very comprehensive approach that would normally lead me towards journalism or being in politics. Nothing Absolutely. To do with sustainability. But one thing I was very interested in was urban planning, for example, and urban development. How do we make sure that we can have urban infrastructure that will support economic and social development? So I was already putting, this triple P approach in the process, so people, planet, and profit. And this is where then I was more interested in sustainable development, to really seek this kind of systemic approach between those three pillars. And it's a bit by luck, actually, that I found a master's in Sweden that was addressing environmental management and sustainability, with a bit more emphasis on what are the actions that we can put in place, what are the systemic aspects that we need to take into account to build not especially a career, but rather a sustainable world. So I spent 2 years then in Sweden, in Lund University, where I studied both for my Erasmus year and my master's. And this is where I really developed a full systemic approach on sustainability. So we had discussions around political theory. We had things about data management and system analysis. We had things dedicated to environment, renewable energy, people's management. So it was very comprehensive, but at the end of the day, I knew it was something I wanted to do, but to see, hey, this is the job that I want to have, I had no idea until very later stage.
So it doesn't surprise me that it wasn't a direct line into sustainability. I'm not sure anybody takes a direct line into it, but I think having that basis of an understanding of nature and being close with nature, I think is important. And I think creates a real impact from a young age on someone. So it is also of no surprise to me that is something that's been a lasting theme through your career. For myself, I grew up in Cornwall in the southwest of the UK, where it's very similar, I imagine, although not quite as glamorous as Lapland. But I think there are some of the similar nature elements in there. And then developing on from that to then your studies, the similarities continue. Politics, philosophy, and economics course. So I think you did politics, economics, and society. So we're very similar, which I think also doesn't give direct progression into sustainability, but I think provides that holistic approach. And I think that probably put you in good stead as well to then go on to a master's in environmental management. One question I have about your upbringing and your childhood, maybe, and potentially your peers at the time who you may keep in contact with or see on LinkedIn. Did you see any of the same elements of that nature and that understanding of wanting to protect the environment around you? Did you see any of that in your peers compared to those who lived in cities, or was it you, the lone ranger out by the campfire, making sure that everyone collected their litter?
Now, maybe I need to correct what I said before. I'm actually a city girl. I grew up in Paris. I love the urban world, but I appreciate with all my heart then those times outdoors. So I am the one actually that came up in those discussions during this master's degree, for example, very urban centered. And then you meet your peers, and one person actually was actually working as a ranger for a natural reserve for elephants, for example. Oh, wow. And then you're like, okay, this is new to me. And we were such a diverse group actually of people from all over the world that we were confronted with completely different realities. And this is perfect because then you need to put yourself in the shoes of someone else. Some were activists, some were more, let's say, corporate at heart. We were very, very diverse. And then when we see how we learned and how we actually confronted our respective stories and experiences, we all changed. Which means I was, let's say, quite open. I did not really have any views, but I was already with the idea that we would support climate change mitigation through technology and innovation, although I had absolutely no background around that. Some that were very corporate are now doing PhDs and helping with human rights in the Amazon forest, for example. So everyone actually evolved through learning from each other. And this was really a fantastic journey. And some now are working in the academia. I'm working with the energy sector. Some are still more with working with social aspects, very luckily. Some turned politicians as well. So it's fantastic because then we can see that with these foundations, and our experience, we managed to dispatch knowledge across industries to really have an impact.
Absolutely. And I think it demonstrates the breadth of how much of an impact you can have within the industry, within sustainability and ESG within itself. Also, you need actors across all of those different industries. You need the politicians, you need the ecologists, you need the people on the ground who are driving change, but also then the ones who are coming up with the strategy and the theory as well. So that's really interesting. Okay, so in that case then, obviously you've achieved a lot within your career and have a lot of experience, but is there one particular accomplishment that you would point to that you're most proud of?
I think many. It's difficult to point at one specifically. Maybe the first one is indeed the swap in careers as I progressed, as I changed countries and lifestyle and everything, and having the ability to reinvent myself, So, for example, after graduation, after I got my master's, we fell into an economic crisis. So no one was interested in any sustainability job, which means that, you need to still live, you still need to find your way and still need to learn. And then I actually started my career at the United Nations. And this is not common as a first job, I would say, where I could actually navigate different functions that now help me understand again how to implement sustainability across an organization. And then I changed country again and I ended up in the UAE. And then you're like, okay, I need to find myself a job in a completely different market, completely different cultural environment. And then I found a really, really nice job working for a business council on the green building sector. So there you approach another type of stakeholders, for example, as well as another type of concerns or opportunities regarding how to improve sustainability in each of those segments. And then I changed again countries and I'm in Switzerland and it's the same. How do I find another job? And I could manage to get this job at ABB. But it's demanding, actually, every time to understand what is my role, what can I do, how can I support the local market, the local industries, how do I sell myself? From a career perspective, it's a strong introspective journey. So I would say maybe what I'm most proud of is not especially one specific achievement, is really the journey itself, I would say.
I've had a look through your experience and the journey is incredible. At the UN Development Programme, on with more potentially entrepreneurial spirits for outside the box and your own sort of vision for connecting people and creating the ideas exchange platform as well. I think that demonstrates your drive too. Did you find that any of those positions arose unexpectedly? As you say, you moved from managing different stakeholders to slightly different industries, all under the guise of sustainability or ESG, but definitely looking to tackle slightly different issues. How did you think that really rose within itself? Was that unexpected for you?
To say it did evolve over time, in the sense that when you're out fresh from university with a degree in your hand, but you have no idea what job you can have with it, and you're not really ready to sell yourself, there's been, of course, quite some luck in the journey, in the sense that, hey, you find the right job vacancy, you apply and you go through the process and then you get the job and then you meet more people and then you learn. But with time, then I could say, hey, now I know who I am. Now I know what I can propose and put on the table. I can sell myself. I would say when you start, generally, things come as they come and you take them. So I think it's a bit of both, all the points you mentioned, but I think it comes with maturity as well.
And I think the network that you must have built over the last 15 years must be very expansive. And it's interesting that you say that, because I think starting out, a lot of sustainability and environmental professionals, at least those who I know, start out with an idea, but that idea tends to be theoretical and potentially idealistic. And then you understand through networking, through understanding what's possible, where you can go, where you can have an impact. And clearly you've had an impact, Marie.
You're absolutely right, in the sense that if you look into 15, 20 years ago, there was no sustainability job. You might have an environmental specialist linked to HSE function, but it's mostly health and safety and a bit of environment somewhere on the side. Then, I saw the market evolve as well, where at some point environment took over because people realized, we need to do environmental reports. So we need some specialists, but it was rather attached to communications. So communications with a bit of environmental knowledge. So still not a need for a proper, professional or trained professional on those topics. Then there was an interest in green financing. So you could see more jobs popping about finance and sustainability. And then when you dive into the vacancies, the profile is still, 99% finance and then 1% understanding of sustainability. And then boom, that would be a professional. So now, actually, if you look at the state of the job market, you are looking into trained professionals with years of experience in ESG, in reporting, understanding key regulations. So now there is a requirement for the type of profiles like mine, with the academic background and the experience behind. So there's been an evolution, but I can assure you, when I started looking for jobs, that was difficult. Now I can talk to people. We have proper connections and relationships and understanding, hey, what are we looking for? What are the type of profiles? What are the type of education? So the job market is way more mature as well with regard to ESG and sustainability.
Yeah, I think, as you mentioned, regulation has driven that to a certain extent, at least. I think the opportunity and how synonymous sustainability has become with the long-term and future value of a business, aligned with the regulatory aspect, and those requirements which have come up have given the rest of us who potentially have come into the game a little bit later than you have, Marie, the opportunity to springboard from the pioneers like yourself who've given us that opportunity. You mentioned some of the challenges previously, but looking at your position now, what are some of the barriers to implementing sustainability strategy or implementing different initiatives that you've seen within ABB, and how have you addressed those within the business?
I think, Regan, I'm a quite an optimistic person. My glass is always half full. I'm rather talking about, let's say, maybe sometimes bottlenecks rather than barriers, but I'm also rather looking at everything as opportunities for improvements. So all the new regulations, for example, are imposing a lot of data reporting. Well, we need to identify the process, we need to identify the tools, we need to look into that in more details. But everything that has been a bottleneck, is being addressed, and we are managing to progress on every single things we're doing. So I don't think we can really say that we struggle in general with the implementation of the sustainability agenda. Should you want me to say that we struggle, I would say we struggle like any other company who has to actually deal with those new regulations, understanding the scope, how they apply, how it works, and how to implement them internally. But I'm super excited actually about those regulatory obligations because they are pushing the way towards a certain direction of transparent disclosure. They are forcing us to put our house in order, again, with regard to data, initiatives, operations. So it's been fun, actually.
I mean, that's excellent, because I think fundamentally it should be. And fundamentally, it is something that when you're working with different stakeholders, there should be engagement with as a fundamental part of a strategic business like ABB. So working with stakeholders from various different nations, what are some of the intricacies that you found with different stakeholders? Do you find that there are certain areas who are more pro-sustainability or pro-social development, and how do you navigate that?
I think the luck that I have is that I worked in different countries, in different regions in the world, with a lot of people from all over the world. So in terms of the cultural understanding of what sustainability means, this has helped a lot. So here I would decouple two things. The first one would be, how we manage our external customers, whether regulatory bodies, whether customers. This is where you need to have those discussions, to have this voice of customer that you can bring in. This is already the first, let's say, most important source of information you can have to understand how you need to deal with it internally. The second part then is managing cultural differences or prioritization from one part of the other in the world. This is interesting, and this is where you need to consider basic knowledge. What is sustainability from a big picture perspective? And then you need to narrow it down. What is sustainability and your priorities, one region in the world? Some locations might be indeed more interested in social component. So they're not going to talk about sustainability. They will talk about corporate social responsibility, CSR, rather. Some will be more interested, for example, in verbalizing how we provide impacts towards sustainability development goals. While some other regions will be more interested about energy transition and impacts at customers or climate actions. So here, this is a matter of understanding what are the priorities and have this flexibility actually in connecting the big picture with what matters to people, what matters to certain parts of the businesses, what matters to the functions.
And off the back of that, then, I'm really interested to understand, so balancing all of these different stakeholder expectations and priorities, obviously towards a centralized sustainability strategy, which looks at ABB's performance overall. And obviously there are relatively different regulatory disclosure requirements in different regions, but fundamentally there is a goal that ABB have to move forward with sustainable development across all of those components. How do you find the opportunities then to balance short-term financial goals with long-term sustainability goals and objectives that need to be achieved? How do you balance the two?
It's a good question. We have obligations, in any case, to report on an annual basis. So 1 year to the other, we need to check how we actually progress against the targets that we set in 2019. But at the same time, we have those drivers, whether regulations, whether investors, whether customers who want to make sure that we are a responsible company. And this is where you need to think long term, whether 5 years, 10 years, with the climate commitments of being net zero, we're looking 2050 as an agenda and timeline. So there, this is where you need to balance everything. And if you translate then sustainability into strategic agenda, this is where you connect with your business strategy. This is where you connect with your technology strategy. So for example, what is the state of innovation for the next 5, 10, 20 years, and how do we want to position ourselves? And this is also where our employees, want to understand how we want to be and who we want to be in the next 10, 15 years. This is how you position yourself towards the younger generation as well. Do they want to work with ABB? Yes, because we have certain values, we have prospects, and we project ourselves to support on the longer term the energy transition, climate mitigation agenda, all those things.
Absolutely. I think it's really important as well that all of those different facts are considered. And I had no doubt that you had considered all of them, of course. But there's one thing that I wanted to pick up a little bit more is around aligning with clients, aligning with regulatory frameworks, looking to anticipate different technological developments. For us as a service-based industry, Scope 3 is a very big category. And I think within that, we need to look at, okay, what are going to be the emissions recording and data management from suppliers? What are going to be the developments across that? But also, what developments will there be in sustainable aviation fuel? These sorts of things which can really help to drive down those Scope 3 emissions. Has that been a consideration for yourself, Marie?
Yes, of course, as we're talking, we're closing already our kind of strategic thinking for 2025 onwards, and Scope 3 is obviously critical because it represents a big side, of course, of our emissions accounting in general. So we have different work streams actually dedicated to addressing all those aspects that you're mentioning, whether we're talking our supply chain emissions. So how do we make sure that we work with the right suppliers to integrate within our production chain the right products, the right materials, and how we make sure we collect the data accordingly. But there is also the downstream part, which is extremely critical, especially for ABB, because it represents the biggest chunk of emissions is the use of our products at customers. And this is where you need indeed to consider what the customers are looking for in terms not only of data, but also how we can help them decarbonize. Because what they are doing is actually extremely important for us as well in terms of our own accounting. So taking into account all those information, it has an impact on who you work with, on how you innovate, on R&D. All of those things are interconnected. And so this is something that I'm not doing hands-on, but this is where I'm working then again with the different functions to make sure that emissions management, but in general, sustainability is taken into account. Because beyond emissions, you also have topics around, substances, chemicals that you're using. You're talking about water management, things that are extremely critical and that will become even more critical, unfortunately, due to climate change. We are talking as well about human rights, because this is a topic which is close to my heart. This is one of the multiple hats that I have, is making sure that we address human rights in our value chain. So everything is systemically integrated. It might start with emissions, but it connects everything together.
I think that's something which is likely to be reflected in upcoming regulatory requirements for businesses over certain sizes. I'm sure you're seeing that in some locations at the moment, but I think that's something which is definitely on the agenda. Luckily, we're seeing it with emissions and with some other areas, but the E of ESG is definitely the focal point at the moment, whereas I think in the next few years, without wanting to be a betting man, I think we might see some of those more human rights, corruption, bribery, those more social elements come into the fray as well. And by the sound of it, Marie, you have everything very much in place to be able to deal with that and have anticipated a lot of it, which is great to hear. From your perspective, and I imagine there are an abundance of different programs and initiatives that you run globally. What's the most notable thing that you can point to that ABB has done in terms of supporting sustainable development across any of the ESG components?
If we look at our main pillar, which is the enabling a low carbon society, this is really looking into our own climate commitment. So we started in 2019 by looking into climate neutrality by 2030. Now we're looking at net zero 2050. So it goes back to your point here again on climate and emissions accounting. So what do we put in place to make sure that we actually walk the talk, that we engage our employees, our different functions, and that we improve our sites and our practices. Your question, Regan, is very interesting because in terms of initiatives, we have a lot of things in place. But one thing for me that is very important as well is all the achievements we've had with regard to our own main pillar, which is enabling a low carbon society, which actually relates to all the activities we're doing internally to walk the talk. So here we're looking into our net zero commitment towards 2050. And all the initiatives we put in place, really integrate what the employees do within the operations, the cars that we are looking for electrification, as well as at the sites where we operate. So we're very proud to have 78% reduction in Scope 1 and 2 emissions since 2019. And we're already looking then again at net zero 2050, which is quite an optimistic or an ambitious approach, because now we need to tackle the full Scope 3 topic that we discussed before. But there's a lot of great efforts actually to make our sites really the best optimum possible. We have fantastic achievements in the world as well, where they're addressing the E topic that you mentioned. So the environmental aspect around waste management, around water management. And you see people being engaged. You see them really willing to make a difference. So beyond those big numbers of great achievements, I want to make sure that we recognize the work behind that is done by people that are helping achieve all this.
Yeah, I completely understand. And I think, firstly, congratulations. I think it's an excellent achievement to reduce your emissions versus your base year by almost 80% across Scope 1 and 2. That puts you in a very good position to be able then to tackle the big monster that is Scope 3. As I'm sure that's something which is definitely on the agenda moving forward. But I think as in terms of getting your house in order and in terms of setting the benchmark for then future growth in terms of sustainability and emissions reductions towards a low carbon economy, as you mentioned, Scope 1 and 2 really introduce the discussion well, I think, at a stakeholder level, and then enable you to be able to springboard from that to then look at the potentially more difficult, or at least more nuanced Scope 3 reductions. And now let's transition back into the life of Marie and ask you a question that I've been really excited to ask you, looking at the different countries that you've lived in, the different job roles that you've taken, looking at your entrepreneurial spirit at times, but then also working within large businesses and managing multiple stakeholder expectations. So imagine you're entering the sustainability industry again, and you're a relative novice. You've just finished your master's in environmental management. What advice, knowing what you know now, what advice are you giving yourself?
It's a very interesting question, because again, I started, let's say, slow motion, and now I see the speed of a topic, and everything is moving super, super fast with new regulations and new scopes, new topics, new trends. I would say be ready. And keep on learning. Why I'm saying this again is that I'm never bored. There's always something going on. Having to understand a new regulatory framework and obligations forces you to go fast, because sometimes the calendars are different than the corporate calendars on how you report or how you deal with certain topics. I would also say, keep your empathy high, which means put yourself in the shoes of other people that have to deal with their regular work while understanding what sustainability means. Because at the end of the day, we're all on the same boat here. We're trying to progress towards the right directions and have this positive impact, but it might sometimes contradict the day-to-day actions or priorities. So be open for challenges as well. You might be the disturber rather than the peacemaker here. I don't know how we could say that, but at the end of the day, understand what the others are dealing with, because this journey works hand in hand with others. Yeah.
Really excellent advice. And I think you alluded to it earlier when you mentioned around the different stakeholders working towards their individual goals and the need for sustainability and ESG more broadly to be integrated into a business's strategy. It's clear from what you've said today that ABB absolutely has that, and you've really been at the helm of driving that change. But for there to be real progress, absolutely, I'm completely in agreement with you that sustainability has to be sat at the table with the board when looking at business strategy to be able to be integrated, to be able to be successful, to be able to be a long-term goal. So I think that's really important. So for any budding ESG or sustainability professionals, I hope they're listening to this today. Finally, before I let you go, I want to ask again another question I've been really looking forward to asking, and I think this is a different one. Looking at your experience and looking at your initial degree, politics, economics, and society, and then how you've refined your skills in different areas to reach the senior position that you're in now. You've worked with multiple different people over that time frame of 15 years, I imagine, and I'm sure there is one notable person. So is there anyone you can think of who you would attribute either professionally or personally to your success, in part or in full?
I will be challenging you here, Regan, and I would say no. Why I'm saying that I haven't found one person is mostly because I'm working with so many that I think have made such contributions to progressing the agenda that is very difficult to point at one specifically. I could actually notify maybe one of my previous bosses, possibly, who actually gave me the mindset that says progress over perfection.
Yeah.
This for me is an important motto, especially in sustainability, because you cannot solve all the problems in one go. You cannot unfortunately, save polar bears the way I wished I would when I was small. But every piece of progress matters. Another thing that I heard actually at a conference was that, hope is not a strategy. We cannot do nothing. We need to make sure that everyone is getting involved. Every step matters. And this is where, again, not pointing at one person, one role model. I've had a lot of mentors in my life that helped me throughout my journey, professionally and privately. But again, if we're all here together, it's a common journey.
Well, I'm glad that you've had support throughout your career. And I think sometimes, to your point, progress over perfection, I think sometimes it is the things that you pick up or you overhear, or you hear a certain mantra or a certain phrase, which in times when you feel like potentially you're siloed in a position, or you're potentially coming up against the bottleneck, which is particularly fractious, those sorts of things keep you going through your progress. So it's really interesting to hear that you've had lots of different attributations to your success and not just one. And I think over your 15-year experience, I think that's of no surprise. Well, Marie, thank you very much for joining today as part of our career conversations. I certainly have learned a lot into your past, both personally and professionally. And it's really interesting to hear about what ABB are doing. As a final question, Marie, before I let you go, what's the most important thing you think we haven't discussed?
One thing I think to remind everyone that is listening today is the value of networking and partnerships, making sure that we can learn from the peers. It's not a single journey here. We're all working together towards the same activities, targets, initiatives, and eventually objectives for a better world. So my advice, if I can provide one, is, reach out. Don't be shy. Make sure that you learn from the others. Make sure that you reach out, share best practices or challenges, and learn from each other. Continuously learn. That's an important one.
Another piece of fantastic advice that budding professionals and people of all seniority can look to. Networking never ceases to amaze the opportunities that can arise. I completely agree. That's definitely a mantra to take forward. Well, Marie, again, thank you very much for your time today. It's been lovely to discuss your experience, what you're currently doing at ABB, the progression that they're making, and a little bit more about your personal life and how you've got to the seniority level that you have. Really appreciate your time, and thank you.
Thanks again.
Thanks for joining us on Career Conversations, part of Spencer Ogden's Soapbox podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories from across the energy sector, and check out the main Soapbox series, where we explore the big topics shaping the energy transition globally. Follow Spencer Ogden on LinkedIn or visit our website spencer-ogden.com for updates, new episodes, and insights. Spencer Ogden is a global recruitment leader dedicated to careers that power a sustainable future across sustainability, natural resources, and infrastructure. With 12 offices worldwide and deep expertise across the full energy value chain, we connect top talent with opportunity.